Picture this for a moment. The baseball universe has a funny way of rearranging itself when you least expect it, almost like a mischievous conductor tapping the podium and cueing a sudden crescendo. Overnight, the Toronto Blue Jays found themselves staring at a landscape that had subtly, but decisively, shifted in their favor. A trade that did not involve Toronto at all has quietly unlocked doors that were previously bolted shut, and today on the Blue Jays Report, we are pulling back the curtain on how everything has fallen perfectly into place for a move that could reshape this roster in ways many fans are not yet talking about. There is a particular thrill in moments like these, when the headlines point one way, but the real story hums beneath the surface. Late last night, information dropped that sent ripples across the league, and while it wasn't a Blue Jays transaction, it might as well have been. The Seattle Mariners went out and acquired Brendan Donovan, a name that had been hovering around Toronto like a tempting mirage for weeks. For Jays fans, that might have felt like a door slamming shut, but in reality, it was the sound of several other doors swinging wide open. Now, before we dive deeper, take a second to like the video, share it with fellow Jays fans, and subscribe to the Blue Jays Report if you haven't already. Your support genuinely fuels this channel, and trust me, you're going to want to be part of what comes next. The Donovan trade matters not because Toronto missed out, but because of what it confirms. The St. Louis Cardinals are no longer flirting with the idea of selling. They are selling. No more smoke, no more bluffing, no more half measures. This is a franchise that has accepted where it stands and is ready to move significant pieces. That single realization changes the entire chessboard for the Blue Jays, because once a team like St. Louis declares itself open for business, opportunities start appearing in places most fans are not looking. Enter Alec Burles, a name that does not dominate talk radio or trend endlessly on social media, but perhaps should. While Donovan was the headliner, Burles has been sitting quietly in the background, almost unnoticed, like a loaded spring waiting to be released. As soon as the Donovan deal became official, the logic snapped into focus. If St. Louis is willing to move that caliber of player, they are absolutely willing to listen on Burles, and suddenly Toronto's needs align beautifully with St. Louis' willingness. Burles is fascinating because he doesn't scream superstar, and that is precisely why he fits. He is 27 years old, left-handed, and has quietly carved out a profile that makes baseball people lean forward in their chairs. He transitioned to first base last season, but still carries outfield experience, and that positional flexibility alone is something this Blue Jays front office adores. It is the kind of player John Schneider can move around like a chess piece, adjusting the board depending on the opponent, the ballpark, or even the mood of the lineup. Statistically, there is plenty to like. An OPS north of .800 last season, 18 home runs, and a reputation for hitting the ball with authority. Burles does not flail wildly at pitches. He does not strike out at an alarming rate. He puts the ball in play, and he does damage when he does. His defense is not going to win him any awards, and that is the knock everyone circles in red pen, but this is a Blue Jays team built to mask imperfections with structure and depth. Imagine him in this lineup for a moment. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. anchors first base, but on days when you want Vlad at designated hitter, Burles slides in seamlessly. Against right-hand pitching, his left-handed bat suddenly becomes a weapon Toronto has been craving. Move him to a corner outfield spot when needed, juggle the alignment, and suddenly the Jays have a lineup that feels less rigid and far more adaptable. Baseball, after all, is a game of matchups, and Burles gives Toronto options. What makes this even more intriguing is cost. Brendan Donovan was always going to be expensive, not just in money, but in prospects and future flexibility. Burles, by comparison, sits in that sweet spot. He will not come cheap, because St. Louis knows his value, but he is not going to gut your farm system either. In a world where the Blue Jays still want ammunition for other needs, that matters enormously. There is also the development angle, and this is where things get genuinely exciting. Toronto believes, perhaps more than most organizations, in its ability to unlock hidden layers in hitters. Dave Popkins has built a reputation for fine-tuning approaches, nudging good hitters into becoming very good ones. Burleson's advanced metrics suggest there is more in the tank. Better pitch selection, a touch more elevation, and suddenly you are not talking about a .800 OPS hitter, but someone flirting with .850 or even .900 in the right environment. If you're enjoying this breakdown so far, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the Blue Jays Report. It genuinely helps the channel grow and keeps this conversation alive. And while this potential trade scenario simmers, there is more bubbling under the surface in Toronto. The excitement around this team is not limited to the present roster. Betting markets recently released their American League Rookie of the Year odds, and the Blue Jays are right there in the thick of it. Seeing Toronto with 2 names in the top 5 is not just flattering, it is telling. It speaks to an organization that is not only trying to win now, but is also laying track for sustained success. Andre Savage sits as a strong favorite, and it is easy to see why. There is a sense around him that something special is coming, that he is on the verge of announcing himself to the league in emphatic fashion. But keep an eye on Kazumo Okamoto as well. He is not being discussed with the same volume, yet his odds tell you that the people putting real money down believe in his chances just as much. Sometimes, the quieter stories end up being the loudest by season's end. All of this feeds into a broader narrative. The Blue Jays are being projected by many to contend seriously in the American League East. That is no small thing in a division that rarely shows mercy. But projections are promises written in pencil. What cements them is depth, flexibility, and the willingness to strike when opportunity presents itself. A move for someone like Alec Burles would not dominate the front page, but it could quietly tilt the scales over a long season. There is, of course, a sobering note amidst the optimism. Injury news has a way of tapping the brakes on even the fastest hype trains. Jake Bloss continues to be a name to monitor closely. Following surgery on his ulnar collateral ligament, his status heading into spring training presents the front office with a delicate balancing act. Roster spots, service time, and long-term development all collide here, and the decisions made will ripple beyond just one player. Placing Bloss on the 60-day injured list would open a roster spot, but it comes with consequences. League pay, service time, and long-term planning all factor in. These are the unglamorous choices that never make highlight reels, yet they shape seasons just as surely as walk-off home runs. Ross Atkins and the front office will have to tread carefully, weighing short-term flexibility against long-term value. And that, in many ways, brings us full circle. This moment for the Blue Jays is about timing. The Cardinals deciding to sell. A left-handed bat like Burleson sitting quietly on the market. A farm system that still has enough depth to make moves without panic. Prospects knocking on the door. Even injuries forcing difficult, but potentially clarifying, decisions. It all feels connected, as if the pieces are aligning in a way that rarely happens by accident. So as we sit here, watching the league shift and the Jays' options expand, one thing feels clear. This is not about chasing the loudest name or winning the off-season headlines. It is about recognizing when the game whispers instead of shouts, and having the confidence to listen. Alec Burles may not be the move everyone is clamoring for, but sometimes the most important additions are the ones that simply make everything else fit better. If you've enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Blue Jays Report. Drop your thoughts in the comments as well, because this conversation is only just getting started. The pieces are on the board, the clock is ticking, and for the Toronto Blue Jays, the next move could define far more than just this season.